Once upon a time, in a distant village surrounded by lush greenery and fertile lands, there lived a hardworking man named Tar. He was not a wealthy man, nor did he own land of his own, but he found joy in the simple things in life. Every day, Tar would wake up before the sun rose, walking to different farms where he labored tirelessly under the scorching sun, planting and harvesting crops for wealthier landowners. Though he toiled endlessly, he never complained, for he knew that his hard work was the only way to provide for his beloved family. Tar's wife was a beautiful and kind-hearted woman who worked as a trader in the village market. Every morning, she would wake up with a smile, carefully arranging baskets of fresh vegetables and fruits to sell. Though they did not have much, she took pride in supporting her family with the little earnings she made from the market. Their 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, were the light of their lives. They grew up in a home that, despite its modesty, was filled with warmth, laughter, and unconditional love. Their house was small, built from mud bricks with a thatched roof, but it was always clean and well kept. At the end of each day, after long hours of exhausting labor, Tar would return home to the joyful embrace of his children. His wife, ever devoted, would welcome him with a warm meal, filling the house with the delicious aroma of freshly cooked food. As they ate together, they would share stories and laughter, strengthening the bond that held their family together. Though they lacked riches, their love for one another made them feel like the wealthiest family in the world. Despite his kind and hardworking nature, Tar found himself slowly being alienated by his wealthier friends. In his youth, he had shared many happy moments with them, laughing and celebrating life's little joys. However, as time passed, they began to distance themselves from him. They now preferred to associate with those who matched their wealth and status, leaving Tar feeling like an outsider. He would often overhear them discussing lavish feasts, new lands they had acquired, and the comforts of their prosperous lives, conversations in which he no longer had a place. One day, a grand village gathering was announced. It was a festival of merriment, where people from all walks of life came together to feast and celebrate. Despite his modest means, Tar decided to attend, hoping to reconnect with his old friends. As he arrived, he saw them laughing, eating, and drinking, the air filled with music and joy. At first, they welcomed him warmly, inviting him to sit with them. Tar felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps they still valued his friendship. However, as the meal ended, one of his friends stood up and smirked. "Tar, since you are not as rich as us, why don't you pack the plates?" he sneered. The laughter of the group stung more than any insult, and Tar felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. "We are all friends," he protested, "and I am older than you all. Just because I don't have as much money as you doesn't mean you can treat me this way." But they only laughed louder, mocking him further. With no other choice, Tar swallowed his pride, gathered the plates, and walked away, his heart heavy with sorrow. As he made his way home, he realized that the love of his family was the only true wealth he had left. As the days passed, Tar could not shake off the humiliation he had suffered at the village gathering. He had once believed in the bond of friendship, thinking that wealth and status could never define true companionship. However, that night proved otherwise. His so-called friends had made it clear he was no longer one of them because of his poverty. Still, Tar chose to focus on what truly mattered, his wife and children. They were his greatest source of strength, and he vowed never to let them suffer because of his misfortunes. Yet, the injustices did not end there. Tar's wealthy friends, who had once shared meals and laughter with him, now saw him as nothing more than a servant. They began to take advantage of his desperate need to provide for his family. Knowing that he had no land of his own and depended on them for work, they assigned him the most degrading tasks. While they spent their days in leisure, Tar was forced to wash their clothes, clean their houses, and do menial labor that they wouldn't dare touch themselves. One day, after an exhausting day in the fields, Tar approached one of his old friends to ask for a small loan. His wife had told him that their food supplies were running low, and he wanted to ensure that his children would not go to bed hungry. Swallowing his pride, he humbly made his request. The friend, a man who once used to share meals with him, laughed cruelly. "If you need money, Tar, you must earn it. Come to my house tomorrow and wash my clothes, sweep my floors, and scrub my courtyard," he said mockingly. Tar clenched his fists, but knew he had no choice. His family needed food, and his dignity was a small price to pay for their survival. The next morning, he arrived at his friend's house at sunrise and worked tirelessly throughout the day. He scrubbed and cleaned until his hands were sore and his body ached. When he finally finished, the friend tossed him a few coins, far less than what his labor was worth. Tar accepted it silently, too exhausted to argue. Another time, Tar worked from dawn to dusk on a wealthy man's farm, expecting fair pay at the end of the day. But when he approached to collect his wages, the man waved him off dismissively. "I don't have the money right now," he said, without a trace of remorse. "Come back next week." Tar left, feeling defeated, knowing that if he protested, he might never be offered work again. Despite being treated unfairly, Tar never allowed himself to give up. Every day he woke up early, pushing through exhaustion and humiliation, determined to provide for his family. He worked harder than ever, knowing that his wife and children depended on him. Even when he returned home empty-handed, his wife would greet him with a warm meal, and his children would run to him with bright smiles. Though his spirit was weary, the love of his family kept him going. But deep inside, he could not ignore the painful reality. No matter how hard he worked, the world seemed determined to keep him in poverty. And with every passing day, the weight of his struggles only grew heavier. As the seasons changed and the harvest season arrived, Tar knew it was his chance to earn more money for his family. The wealthiest man in the village, Chief Azuka, owned the largest farm, and Tar hoped that working for him would bring better rewards than the meager wages he usually received. Early one morning, Tar gathered his two sons and went to Chief Azuka's grand estate. He greeted the chief respectfully and made his request. "Chief Azuka, my sons and I are willing to help with your harvest. We will work hard and ensure everything is completed on time," he said earnestly. Chief Azuka, a man known for his power and wealth, studied Tar for a moment before nodding. "Very well, Tar. My farm is large, and I need all the help I can get. You may begin tomorrow," he replied. The next day, before the sun had even risen, Tar and his sons arrived at the farm and began their labor. They worked tirelessly under the scorching sun, their hands rough and their backs aching. They harvested crops, carried heavy sacks, and continued even through heavy rains. Despite the exhaustion, Tar and his sons pushed forward, knowing that their hard work would bring food to their table. After many days of intense labor, the harvest was finally complete. The crops were neatly packed and stored, and Tar felt a sense of relief. He wiped the sweat from his brow and turned to his sons with a tired smile. "We did it. Now, let's go and collect our payment," he said. Tar approached Chief Azuka, his heart filled with anticipation. "Chief, we have finished the harvest. May we have our payment now?" he asked. Chief Azuka nodded and handed Tar some money, but it was only a fraction of what he was owed. "Here is 1/3 of your payment. Come back tomorrow for the rest," the chief said with an unusual smile. Tar hesitated. Chief Azuka had never delayed payment before, and something about his demeanor felt strange. However, he had no choice but to accept the money and hope that the rest would be given the next day. When Tar returned home, he handed the money to his wife. "Prepare a good meal for the children tonight," he said, attempting to mask his unease. That night, as his family enjoyed their meal, Tar's wife noticed his troubled expression. "Tar, why do you look so worried? Did something happen at Chief Azuka's farm?" she asked gently. Tar sighed, his concern evident. "Chief Azuka didn't pay me fully. He told me to come back tomorrow for the rest. I have a bad feeling about this. He has never done this before," he admitted. His wife placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You have worked hard, Tar. Everything will be fine. Let's enjoy this meal with our children tonight," she reassured him. Tar nodded, trying to push aside his worries. But deep inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that Chief Azuka's delayed payment was more than just a simple oversight. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The next morning, Tar returned to Chief Azuka's grand house, determined to collect the rest of his payment. As he approached, he noticed the unusual warmth in the chief's demeanor. Instead of handing him the remaining money immediately, Chief Azuka greeted him with a wide smile and gestured towards a lavishly prepared table. "Ah, Tar, welcome back. Come, sit with me. Let us share a meal before we talk business," the chief said, his voice filled with an unsettling friendliness. Tar hesitated. This was not the usual way transactions were handled, but he was exhausted, and the tempting aroma of the food in front of him made him lower his guard. He sat down and ate, while the chief spoke in a smooth, persuasive tone. "Tar, you have worked hard all your life," Chief Azuka began, sipping from his cup. "But what have you gained? A few coins here and there? A house made of mud? A life filled with endless labor?" Tar remained silent, unsure of what to say. "You deserve more," the chief continued. "I have an opportunity for you. A way for you to become wealthy beyond your imagination without all this back-breaking work." Tar's heart pounded. "Wealth without work?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Chief Azuka leaned forward, his expression calm but calculating. "Yes, there is a way. It requires a small ritual, but no bloodshed. Just a simple offering, and in return, the gods will bless you with riches beyond measure." Tar frowned, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. "A ritual? What kind of ritual?" Instead of answering, Chief Azuka reached into his robe and pulled out a large bundle of money. He placed it in front of Tar. "Take this. It is 10 times what I owe you. A small taste of what you could have," he said smoothly. Tar's breath caught in his throat. He had never seen so much money in his life. His hands trembled as he picked up the bundle. His mind was spinning. This money could change his family's life forever. "I will think about your offer," Tar said cautiously. "Take your time," Chief Azuka replied with a knowing smile. "But remember, opportunities like this do not come often." Tar left the chief's house, feeling both exhilarated and uneasy. He held the money tightly in his hands, but his heart was heavy with doubt. When he arrived home, his wife gasped at the sight of the bundle of cash. "Tar, where did you get all this money?" she asked in shock. He sighed and explained everything: the chief's offer, the promise of wealth, and the mysterious ritual. His wife's expression darkened with concern. "Tar, this sounds too good to be true," she said, her voice filled with worry. "We have always lived honestly and worked hard for what we have. Be careful. Easy riches often bring great trouble." Tar knew she was right, but as he lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the thought of what he could provide for his family if he accepted the offer lingered in his mind. The temptation was growing stronger, and despite his fears, he knew that deep inside, he was considering it. For the next few days, Tar wrestled with his thoughts. He couldn't ignore the bundle of money that Chief Azuka had given him. It was more than he had ever possessed in his entire life. The promise of a better future for his family tempted him. Yet his wife's words echoed in his mind. Easy riches often bring great trouble. As the sun set one evening, Tar made up his mind. The struggle of poverty had weighed on him for too long. He could no longer watch his children go to bed hungry, while others in the village lived in luxury. He turned to his wife, his voice steady but conflicted. "I have decided," he said. "Tomorrow, I will go to the edge of the forest and meet the old man. I will do the ritual." His wife's face fell, her eyes filled with concern. "Tar, please reconsider. We have survived this long without riches. What if this ritual demands more than you can give?" Tar reached for her hands, squeezing them gently. "I promise, nothing bad will happen. Chief Azuka assured me that there will be no bloodshed. This is our chance to escape poverty." His wife sighed, her heart heavy with doubt. "Just promise me you will come back safe." "I promise," Tar said, though deep inside, he wasn't sure of anything anymore. At dawn, Tar made his way to the forest's edge, his steps slow and hesitant. The air grew thick and eerie as he walked deeper into the trees, until he finally reached a small hut hidden within the dense foliage. An old man with a long white beard and piercing eyes stood waiting for him. "Ah, Tar," the old man said, his voice deep and knowing. "Chief Azuka told me you would come. Are you ready for the ritual?" Tar swallowed hard, but nodded. "Yes, I am ready." The old man led him to a clearing where a circle of stones had been carefully arranged. Strange symbols were drawn in the dirt, and the air seemed to hum with an otherworldly presence. Tar's heartbeat quickened. The old man picked up a bowl filled with dark, thick oil and handed it to Tar. "Rub this oil on your body. It is the mark of the gods. They will grant you wealth without shedding blood." With trembling hands, Tar applied the oil as instructed. The moment the thick liquid touched his skin, a strange warmth spread through his body. The old man began to chant in a low, rhythmic tone, his voice blending with the rustling of the trees. As the ritual concluded, the old man stepped forward and placed his hands on Tar's head. "You have been chosen. The gods will bless you. But remember, there is always a price to pay. Use your wealth wisely." The old man then handed Tar a small pouch. When Tar opened it, his breath caught inside were gold coins, shimmering even in the dim forest light. "This is just the beginning," the old man said. "Go now and take care of your family." Tar thanked him, though his heart felt heavy with an unshakable unease. As he walked home, he clutched the pouch tightly, knowing that his life was about to change forever. But deep inside, he couldn't help but wonder, what was the true cost of this wealth? Tar's life changed overnight. The once humble man, who had struggled to provide for his family, now lived in abundance. Gold coins filled his home. Fine clothes replaced his tattered garments, and his children no longer went to bed hungry. The villagers, who had once looked down on him, now whispered in awe and curiosity. "How did Tar become so wealthy so quickly?" they asked. Some believed he had discovered a hidden treasure, while others thought the gods had finally rewarded his hard work. His former friends, who had once mocked him for his poverty, now flocked to his side, showering him with praise and invitations to their feasts. At home, His family rejoiced in their newfound fortune. His children played in silk garments, and his wife cooked the finest meals they had ever tasted. But despite their happiness, his wife remained uneasy. One evening, as they sat together, she took his hand and looked into his eyes. "Tar, one am grateful for all we have now, but I cannot ignore this feeling in my heart. Where did this wealth truly come from?" she asked. Tar forced a smile. "The gods have blessed us," he said. "We have struggled enough. Now, it is our time to enjoy prosperity." His wife nodded, but deep inside, she knew great wealth often came with an even greater cost. As the weeks passed, Tar's wealth continued to grow. He bought land, livestock, and even hired workers to manage his new farms. His once humble home was now a grand house filled with fine furniture and luxurious fabrics. The villagers watched in amazement, but whispers of suspicion began to spread. "How did Tar become rich so suddenly?" they murmured. Some believed he had been blessed by the gods, while others suspected something more sinister. His old friends, who had once shunned him, now surrounded him daily, eager to share in his success. One afternoon, a group of them visited him, bringing gifts and exaggerated praise. "Tar, you are truly blessed. We have never seen such fortune before. Tell us, what is your secret?" one of them asked eagerly. Tar forced a polite smile but felt uneasy. He knew the truth could never be revealed. "The gods have rewarded my hard work," he replied. "That is all I can say." His friends exchanged knowing glances, unconvinced. "Come now, Tar, we are your friends. Surely you can share your secret with us," another urged. But Tar remained firm. "I appreciate your friendship, but this is not something I can explain." Frustrated, his friends eventually began to distance themselves again. Soon, rumors spread through the village. Some whispered that Tar had made a deal with dark forces. Others claimed he had performed forbidden rituals. Though no one confronted him directly, he felt the weight of their suspicion. At home, Tar's wife noticed the change in him. He had become more distant, his mind always preoccupied. One evening, as they sat together, she finally voiced her concerns. "Tar, one see the burden you carry. What is troubling you?" she asked gently. Tar sighed deeply. "Our friends keep asking about our wealth. They do not believe it is just a blessing from the gods. Their questions never stop." His wife squeezed his hand. "Let them talk, Tar. We know the truth, and that is what matters." He nodded, but he knew deep inside that the true test of his decision was yet to come. Then, one quiet evening, a messenger arrived at their home. Tar's heart pounded as he read the note. The old man from the forest had summoned him. The next morning, he made his way back to the edge of the forest, his heart filled with dread. When he arrived at the hut, the old man was waiting for him, his expression grave. "The time has come for you to fulfill your part of the bargain," the old man said. Tar's stomach twisted with fear. "What do you mean?" he asked hesitantly. The old man's gaze was cold. "The gods demand a sacrifice. You must give them your only daughter, Amina." Tar staggered back in horror. "No, not Amina. I cannot do this," he gasped. The old man remained unmoved. "If you refuse, you will lose everything: your wealth, your sanity, and eventually your life. The gods will take her themselves if you do not." Tar's world shattered around him. The wealth he had once thought would bring happiness now felt like a curse. He had been blinded by greed, and now he was faced with an impossible choice. As he walked back home, his mind was a whirlwind of fear and despair. How could he sacrifice his own daughter And yet, if he refused, would the gods truly take her anyway? For the first time since he had accepted the old man's offer, Tar truly understood there was no such thing as easy riches without consequences. Tar returned home that evening, a broken man. The weight of his choices pressed down on him like an unbearable burden. He sat in silence, watching his daughter Amina laugh and play, her innocent face glowing in the soft light of dusk. The thought of sacrificing her tore at his soul, but the fear of losing everything gnawed at his mind. There must be another way, he thought desperately. But the old man's words echoed in his head. If you do not fulfill the gods' demand, they will take her themselves, and you will lose everything. For the next few days, Tar wrestled with his conscience. At times, he tried to justify the unthinkable. I still have 2 sons, he told himself. They can carry on the family name. But then he would see Amina's bright smile, and the thought of harming her would shatter his resolve. His wife noticed his restlessness. Tar, something is wrong. You haven't been yourself, she said one night. Please, tell me what is troubling you. Tar wanted to confess, but he couldn't bear to see the horror in her eyes. He simply shook his head. Everything will be fine, he muttered. On the 5th night, with dread clawing at his heart, he made his decision. He prepared the black oil and the ceremonial drink as the old man had instructed. His hands shook as he mixed the concoction, knowing the terrible purpose it served. Stepping outside, he called to Amina, who was playing in the yard. Amina, come here, my dear, he said softly. She ran to him without hesitation, her trusting eyes looking up at him. Yes, father? Drink this, my child, and rub this oil on your skin. It is important, he said, forcing a smile. Amina hesitated for a moment, but she trusted her father completely. She took the drink and used the oil as instructed. Moments later, she fell unconscious. Tar's heart shattered, but he knew what had to be done. Carrying her in his arms, he walked into the forest, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he reached the clearing, he gently laid her on the ground. The old man had prepared the ritual's final step, a large mortar where the sacrifice was to be made. As Tar raised his trembling hands, ready to complete the ritual, a piercing scream shattered the silence. Tar, no! His wife had followed him, her voice filled with desperation. The villagers, alerted by her cries, rushed into the clearing with torches, illuminating the horrifying scene. Before Tar could act, strong hands grabbed him, pulling him away from Amina. His wife ran to their daughter, tears streaming down her face as she cradled the unconscious girl. What have you done? She sobbed. The villagers dragged Tar back to the village, where he was bound and kept under guard. His wife sat beside Amina as the herbalist worked tirelessly to reverse the effects of the ritual. The next morning, Tar was taken before the king. He confessed everything: his deal with Chief Azuka, the ritual, and the unbearable burden of his greed. The king listened carefully before speaking. You have committed a great sin, Tar, but because your wife saved your daughter in time, your life will be spared. You shall spend the rest of your days in prison, where you will work to atone for your actions. Tar bowed his head, accepting his fate. He had lost everything: his wealth, his dignity, and the love of his family. As he sat in his prison cell that night, he thought about what had led him here. He had been blinded by greed, believing that wealth would bring happiness. But in the end, the greatest treasure had always been his family, and he had nearly destroyed it for gold. His story spread throughout the village, serving as a lesson to all. True wealth is not measured in gold, but in love, integrity, and the happiness of those we cherish.